The mountain does not forgive. It does not negotiate, does not compromise, and certainly does not care about the ambitions of men who dare to climb its frozen spine. I learned this truth long before I saw what I saw, long before I understood what the Yeti truly is and what it does with those who trespass too far into its domain. My name is Dr. Marcus Webb, and I am a glaciologist who spent 15 years studying ice cores in the most remote regions of the Himalayas. I am also a man who once believed that legends were nothing more than stories told by frightened villagers around fires, tales designed to keep children from wandering too far from home. I was wrong. The expedition that changed everything began in late October, when the monsoon rains had finally ceased and the peaks stood bare and brutal against a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Our team consisted of 4 people: myself, my research partner Dr. Sarah Chun, our Sherpa guide Pemba, and a documentary filmmaker named Jake Morrison, who had convinced our university to fund his project about climate change in the high Himalayas. We established our base camp at approximately 5,200 meters, in a valley so remote that even the nearest village was a 3-day trek away. The silence there was absolute, broken only by the occasional crack of shifting ice or the wind that screamed through the narrow passes like something alive and furious. The cold at that altitude is not merely uncomfortable. It is a presence, a living entity that seeks every gap in your clothing, every moment of weakness in your resolve. Your breath freezes in your lungs. Your fingers lose sensation within minutes of exposure. The skin on your face cracks and bleeds. Every step requires conscious effort. Every decision must account for the fact that your brain is slowly being starved of oxygen. We were prepared for all of this, of course. We had the best equipment money could buy, decades of combined experience, and a meticulous plan that accounted for every known variable. What we did not account for was the unknown. The first 3 days passed without incident. We collected our samples, documented the retreat of the glacier, and marveled at the pristine beauty of a place untouched by the machinery of modern civilization. Jake filmed everything with an enthusiasm that bordered on manic, his camera capturing the endless white expanse, the jagged peaks that seemed to pierce the sky itself, and our frost-covered faces as we went about our work. Sarah and I focused on our core samples, extracting cylinders of ancient ice that held within them the atmospheric history of the planet. Pemba maintained the camp with the quiet efficiency of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. On the 4th morning, everything changed. I woke to the sound of Pemba's voice outside my tent, speaking rapidly in Nepali with a tone I had never heard from him before. When I emerged into the brutal cold of dawn, I found him standing at the edge of our camp, staring at something in the snow. Sarah and Jake were already there, and the expression on Sarah's face told me immediately that something was wrong. Very wrong. The tracks were enormous. Each footprint measured approximately 45 centimeters in length and 20 centimeters in width, pressed deep into the snow with a force that suggested something massively heavy had passed through our camp during the night. The stride length was over 2 meters, far beyond anything a human could achieve. The prints led from the glacier above us, passed within 10 meters of our tents, and continued down into the valley below before disappearing into a field of broken ice. If you're finding this story compelling, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more terrifying true encounters from the world's most remote and dangerous places. Hit that notification bell so you never miss a story that will keep you awake at night. Bear, Jake said, his camera already recording. Has to be a bear. But Pemba was shaking his head, his weathered face drawn tight with something that looked like fear. No bear, he said quietly. Wrong shape, wrong depth, wrong everything. He looked at me, and in his eyes I saw something I had never seen before, genuine terror. We should leave. Today. Now. I was a scientist. I dealt in measurable phenomena, in data and evidence and reproducible results. Let me examine them properly, I said, retrieving my measuring tape and camera from my tent. The rational part of my brain was already constructing explanations. Unusual bear species, distortion from melting and refreezing, parallax error in my visual assessment. But as I knelt beside those tracks and ran my gloved hand along the edge of the print, feeling the crisp definition of what appeared to be 5 distinct toes, that rational voice grew quieter. The depth of the impression was wrong. Whatever made these tracks weighed significantly more than any bear. The spacing suggested a bipedal gait, perfectly balanced and purposeful. And there, at the heel of one print, I saw something that made my breath catch in my throat. What appeared to be dermal ridges, the equivalent of fingerprints, preserved in perfect detail in the crystalline snow. Sarah saw it too. She was crouched beside another print, her scientific instruments forgotten, simply staring at the evidence before us. "Marcus," she said quietly, "this doesn't match any known species profile." "Then we document it," I replied, forcing confidence into my voice. "We photograph, measure, take casts if possible. Whatever this is, we approach it scientifically." But Pemba was already packing. "Yeti," he said simply. "My grandfather told me stories." His grandfather told him. "Every Sherpa knows. You do not follow these tracks. You do not stay where they have passed. The mountain has guardians, and they do not welcome those who take from it." "Pemba, please," I began, but he cut me off with a sharp gesture. "I will guide you down tomorrow morning. Tonight, we secure everything. No lights after dark. No noise. Stay in your tents." His voice held an authority that brooked no argument. "The Yeti watches. Always watches. If it wanted us dead, we would already be dead. These tracks are a warning." The day passed in a haze of forced normalcy. We continued our work, but the enthusiasm had drained from all of us. Jake's camera captured the tracks from every angle, his earlier excitement replaced by something more complex, a mixture of fear and fascination that I recognized because I felt it too. Sarah and I collected our samples mechanically, our usual scientific banter replaced by a heavy silence. The mountain itself seemed different now, the silence more oppressive, the shadows deeper and more threatening. As the sun began its descent behind the western peaks, painting the snow in shades of blood red and purple, I noticed something that made my skin crawl. The tracks we had been documenting all day were no longer alone. New prints had appeared, circling our camp in a wide arc, always staying just beyond the range where we had been working. Whatever had made them had been watching us all day, observing from a distance, moving with such silence and stealth that none of us had heard or seen anything. We were being studied. That night, I lay in my tent listening to the wind and thinking about those tracks. My scientific training warred with something more primal, an instinct that had kept my ancestors alive in a world full of predators. The rational part of my brain insisted on mundane explanations: bears, distortion, misidentification. But the part of my brain that still remembered how to be prey, the part that had not been dulled by centuries of civilization, was screaming at me to run. The temperature had dropped to -30°C. Inside my thermal sleeping bag, wearing every layer I owned, I was warm enough to survive, but not comfortable. My breath formed clouds of ice crystals that caught the dim light of my headlamp. Outside, the wind had died to almost nothing, leaving a silence so complete that I could hear the blood rushing in my ears. Then I heard something else. It started as a low rumble, so deep that I felt it in my chest before I actually heard it. The sound grew, rising and falling in a pattern that was almost rhythmic, almost musical. It was not the wind. It was not ice shifting. It was biological, purposeful, and it came from multiple directions at once. They were communicating. I held my breath, straining to hear, my heart hammering against my ribs. The vocalizations continued for perhaps 5 minutes, a complex exchange of calls and responses that suggested intelligence, organization, coordination. Then, silence. In the darkness of my tent, I became aware of a smell. It crept through the ventilation gaps in my shelter, thick and cloying and utterly foreign. It was organic, but not quite animal, carrying notes of musk, decay, and something metallic that reminded me of blood. The odor was so strong that it made my eyes water, so pervasive that I could taste it on my tongue. Something was right outside my tent. I did not move. I barely breathed. Every animal instinct I possessed told me to remain absolutely still, to make myself as small and insignificant as possible. Through the thin fabric of my tent, I could see a shadow, massive and vaguely humanoid, blocking the starlight. It stood there for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, and I swear I could feel its attention focused on me, could sense some vast intelligence considering my presence. Then it moved away, and I heard the soft crunch of footsteps in the snow, each one precisely placed, moving with a grace that seemed impossible for something large. The steps circled the camp once, twice, and then headed up toward the glacier, fading into silence. I did not sleep that night. None of us did. When dawn finally broke, painting the peaks in shades of gold and pink, we emerged from our tents to find that the creature had left us a message. Arranged in a circle around our camp were bones. Human bones. Dozens of them, perhaps more, weathered by years of exposure to the elements, but still unmistakably human. Skulls, femurs, ribs, vertebrae, all carefully placed in a pattern that could not possibly be random. Sarah was crying silently, her scientific composure finally shattered. Jake's camera hung forgotten at his side. Pemba stood with his hands clasped in prayer, murmuring something in Nepali that I did not understand, but whose meaning was clear enough. A plea for protection, for forgiveness, for safe passage from this cursed place. "We leave now," Pemba said. "No discussion. We leave everything except what we need to survive the descent. We go now, or we become part of the mountain's collection. If this account has disturbed you as much as it disturbs me to recall it, please share this video with others who need to understand what truly dwells in the world's most remote places. The truth must be told, even when that truth is terrible. But I could not leave. Not yet. Because as I stood there among those bones, I realized something that changed everything. They were arranged in anatomical order, sorted by type and size, laid out with a precision that spoke of intelligence and purpose. This was not the random scattering of a predator's feeding ground. This was a collection, a museum, a record, and I needed to understand why. "Give me 2 hours," I said to Pemba. 2 hours to document this, to understand what we're looking at, and then we go. I promise. He looked at me with something between pity and disgust. "The Yeti does not kill for food," he said quietly. "It kills to protect. It kills to warn. These bones are not victims of hunger. They are victims of arrogance. They are people who did not listen, who did not respect, who thought they could take from the mountain without consequence." He gestured at the arranged bones. "This is what it does with those who go too far. It preserves them. It displays them. It uses them to teach the next ones who come." "But why?" Sarah asked, her voice hoarse. "If it wanted us dead, why warn us? Why not just kill us in our sleep?" "Because," Pemba said, "the Yeti is not a monster. It is a guardian. It gives chances. First, the tracks. Then, the sounds. Then, the display. 3 warnings. If we ignore them all, then—" He did not finish the sentence. He did not need to. I spent the next 2 hours in a state of focused horror, photographing and cataloging the bones. They represented at least 15 individuals, possibly more. The weathering patterns suggested they had been collected over decades, perhaps centuries. Some were ancient, others more recent. I found the remnants of modern climbing equipment, a crampon, a carabiner, fragments of synthetic fabric. These people had been well-equipped, experienced, prepared, and they had all ended up the same way. As I worked, I became aware of a pattern in the arrangement. The bones were not simply sorted by type. They were positioned to form a shape, a symbol. When viewed from above, from the slope of the glacier, the collection formed what looked like a crude but unmistakable image, a human figure with arms outstretched, surrounded by smaller figures in postures of supplication or flight. It was a warning and a record. It said, "I am here. I am powerful. I protect this place. These are those who challenged me." And then I found something that made my blood turn to ice in my veins. Among the bones was a skull, more recent than the others, with weathering that suggested it had been here less than a year. Attached to it with what appeared to be plant fibers was a laminated card, faded but still readable. It was an expedition permit, issued by the Nepalese government. The name on the permit was Dr. Heinrich Kraus, a German anthropologist who had disappeared during a solo research expedition 18 months ago. His disappearance had made international news. Search teams had found nothing. Now I knew why. "We need to report this," Sarah said, looking at the permit in my hand. "This is evidence. This is proof that Kraus died here. His family deserves to know." But even as she said it, I saw the realization dawn in her eyes. Report it to whom? And what would we say? That we had found his remains arranged in a ritualistic display by a cryptid that science insisted did not exist? That we had been warned by a Yeti? We would be laughed out of the academic community. Our careers would be over. And worse, we would bring attention to this place, would invite others to come seeking their own proof, their own evidence. We would condemn them to the same fate as Kraus and all the others whose bones lay before us. "No report," Pemba said firmly. "You understand now? The Yeti keeps these bones for a reason. They are its library, its record. To take them, to report them, to bring others here seeking glory or proof or rescue. That would be the greatest violation. The mountain would not forgive. The Yeti would not forgive." I looked down at Kraus's skull, at the empty sockets that had once held eyes that saw what I was seeing, a brain that had perhaps understood what I was beginning to understand. He had come here seeking knowledge, seeking to document the undocumented, to prove the unprovable. And the mountain had claimed him, had made him part of its eternal warning to those who would come after. I made a decision that still haunts me. I placed the skull back where I had found it, positioned the permit exactly as it had been, and stepped away from the collection. "We document nothing," I said to Jake, who was filming everything with a kind of morbid fascination. "You erased those files. All of them. We saw tracks. We got spooked. We left. That's the story. That's the only story." "But the evidence," Jake protested. "This could be the discovery of the century. This could prove. It could prove that we're capable of getting people killed." I cut him off. "Every armchair adventurer, every cryptid hunter, every documentary crew that comes here looking for the Yeti will end up part of that collection. Is that what you want? To be responsible for creating a tourist attraction out of a graveyard?" The words hung in the frozen air between us. Jake looked at his camera, at the terabytes of footage he had collected, at the career-defining documentary that he would have to destroy. Then, slowly, he began deleting files. We broke camp in a blur of controlled panic, stuffing our gear into packs with none of the usual care or organization. We would leave behind our core samples, our scientific instruments, everything that was not essential for survival. The mountain would keep our research, just as it kept everything else that trespassed too far into its domain. As we prepared to descend, I took one last look at the bone collection, and that was when I saw it. Standing on the ridge above us, perfectly silhouetted against the morning sky, was a figure. It stood at least 3 meters tall, covered in thick fur that ranged from dark brown to silver gray. Its posture was upright, bipedal, but with a breadth of shoulder and chest that was far beyond human proportions. Even from a distance of perhaps 200 meters, I could see the intelligence in the way it stood, the deliberate quality of its observation. The Yeti was watching us leave. Sarah grabbed my arm, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt through the layers of insulation. "Don't look at it," she whispered urgently. Pemba said, "Don't make eye contact, don't show interest. Just gather your things and we go." But I could not look away. And as I stood there, locked in that moment of impossible contact, something extraordinary happened. The creature raised one massive arm and pointed down the mountain, toward the valley, towards safety. The gesture was unmistakable in its meaning. Go. Leave. Do not return. Then it did something I still cannot fully explain or rationalize. It turned its head slightly, and I swear it looked directly at me, past the distance and the difference in our species, and I felt a pressure in my mind, not painful but insistent, like someone speaking in a room next door. What I experienced in that moment was not words, not language as we understand it, but meaning, pure and undiluted. You understand now. You have seen the price of intrusion. These mountains are not yours to claim. The ice is not yours to extract. The secrets are not yours to expose. I am the last guardian of what remains wild and untouched in your world. These bones are those who tried to take what was not theirs to take, who tried to profit from what should remain sacred. Go back to your civilization. Tell no one. Bring no one. Let this place keep its mystery or become part of it forever. The pressure released, and I stumbled backward, gasping for air I had forgotten to breathe. Sarah caught me, keeping me upright. "Marcus? Marcus, are you okay?" It spoke to me. I whispered, not with words, but it spoke. It's trying to protect something. We have to go. We have to leave and never come back. Pemba was nodding, his expression grim but satisfied. "You were given the third gift," he said. "The first gift is the warning tracks. The second is the bone display. The third is the voice in the mind. You are lucky. Most people who receive the third gift do not survive to tell others about it. The Yeti has judged you, and it has decided you are worthy of carrying its message." The descent took us 3 days of brutal, exhausting travel. We pushed ourselves far beyond safe limits, driven by a primal need to put distance between ourselves and that place of bones and warnings. We spoke little, each of us locked in our own private horror and revelation. At night, we took turns on watch, though we all knew that if the Yeti decided to follow us, no amount of vigilance would save us. If you've made it this far in this account, you understand that some truths are too terrible and too important to keep silent. Subscribe to this channel, share this story, and help spread awareness about what we're losing as we push further into the last wild places on Earth. But do not go seeking what should remain unfound. But it did not follow. It had made its judgment and delivered its message, and it had returned to its vigil over the mountain. We were no longer a threat, no longer intruders. We were messengers, whether we wanted to be or not. When we finally reached the nearest village, we cleaned ourselves, rested, and prepared our departure from Nepal. Jake's camera held hours of footage of glaciers and mountains and our scientific work, but nothing of what we had really seen. Sarah and I compiled our field notes with careful omissions, documenting the retreat of the glacier, but none of the reasons we had abandoned our research site. We told our university that unexpected weather had forced an early evacuation. They accepted our explanation without question. Before we left the village, Pimba took me aside. "You will be changed by this," he said. "You will try to return to your normal life, your normal work, but you will find that it is impossible. You have seen too much. You know too much. The Yeti gives its message to very few, and those who receive it are never the same." "What happened to the others?" I asked. "The others who received the message and survived?" "Some become hermits, unable to return to civilization knowing what they know. Some become protectors of wild places, fighting against those who would exploit and destroy. Some go mad from the weight of the secret they carry." He placed a weathered hand on my shoulder. "And some, like my grandfather and his grandfather before him, become guides. They help others understand the mountain without violating it. They keep the balance." "Which will I become?" I asked. He smiled sadly. "That is for you to decide. 6 months have passed since we descended from that mountain. I resigned my position at the university, citing personal reasons. Sarah did the same. We could not continue our glaciology work, could not return to the field, knowing what we knew. Every research proposal felt like a betrayal, every expedition plan like a blueprint for violation. Jake's documentary was never released. He told his funders that technical difficulties had corrupted the footage. In truth, he had deleted everything and destroyed his drives. Last I heard, he was working as a photographer for a conservation organization, documenting endangered habitats with a fervor that bordered on obsessive. I live now in a small cabin in Montana, far from the academic world I once inhabited. I volunteer with environmental protection groups, fighting against mining operations and logging companies that want to push further into the last wild places. I do not tell them why I fight so hard, why I am so certain that some places must remain inviolate. They think I am simply passionate about conservation. They do not know that I have seen what guards those places, what has appointed itself as the last defender of the wild. Sometimes, late at night, I still feel that pressure in my mind, that sense of vast intelligence observing from a great distance. I think the Yeti is checking on me, ensuring that I have kept my promise, that I have not betrayed its trust. And in those moments, I send back my own message, clumsy and inadequate compared to what I received, but sincere. I remember. I understand. I will not betray what I have seen. The bones remain on that mountain, arranged in their eternal warning pattern. Kraus and all the others are still there, part of the mountain's collection, part of its teaching. New climbers still venture into those peaks, seeking glory or profit or the thrill of conquest. Some of them do not return, and I wonder, in my darkest moments, if their bones will be added to the collection, if the Yeti will arrange them with the same care and precision, another verse in its endless song of warning. I know now what the Yeti does with the bodies of its victims. It preserves them. It honors them in its own terrible way. It uses them to teach. It transforms them from individuals into symbols, from people into messages. They become the voice of the mountain itself, crying out to those who would listen. Go back. This is not for you. Some mysteries should remain mysteries. Some places should remain unknown. And I, who once sought to uncover every mystery, to drag every secret into the light of scientific understanding, have become the guardian of the greatest mystery of all. I am the keeper of a truth that must not be fully told, a witness to something that must remain half legend and half rumor. I have seen the cost of knowing too much, and I have chosen to protect others from paying that cost. The mountain keeps its secret, and I am complicit in that keeping. And when people ask me if I believe in the Yeti, if I think there is really something out there in the frozen heights, I smile and tell them what they want to hear. It's just stories, just legends, nothing to worry about. But late at night, When the wind howls and the temperature drops and I am alone with my memories, I know the truth. The Yeti is real. It is ancient and intelligent and terrifying in its purpose. It is the last guardian of the wild, the final defense against humanity's endless hunger to consume and catalog and exploit. And it is watching, always watching, waiting for the next intrusion, preparing the next warning, arranging the next addition to its bone collection. I pray that no one I know will ever see what I have seen, will ever receive the message I received. But I know that prayer will not be answered. The mountains call to people with a voice that cannot be ignored. They promise glory and discovery and triumph over nature itself. And some will answer that call, will push too far into places that should remain untouched. And the Yeti will be there, as it has always been, fulfilling its ancient purpose. The bones will tell their story. The mountain will keep its secret, and I will remain silent, carrying my burden of terrible knowledge, hoping that my silence will save more lives than my truth would claim. That is what the Yeti does with the bodies of its victims. It makes them immortal in service of a warning that humanity refuses to hear. And it judges those who intrude, giving them 3 chances to turn back before adding them to its eternal collection. I received those chances. I heeded those warnings. I was judged worthy of survival. Not everyone will be so fortunate. If you have read this account to its end, you now carry a fraction of the burden I carry. You know what I know. You understand what I understand. And you must make your own choice about what to do with that knowledge. Will you respect the mystery? Will you honor the warning? Or will you, like so many before you, convince yourself that the rules do not apply to you, that you are different, that you can succeed where others have failed? The mountain is patient. The Yeti is eternal. And the collection of bones grows larger with each passing year, each one a testament to human arrogance, each one a voice crying out in silent warning to those who come after. Listen to those voices, respect those warnings, and stay away from the high places where the Yeti keeps its vigil. Some secrets are protected for a reason. Some mysteries exist to teach us humility, and some guardians will defend their domain with a terrible and absolute finality. I have told you what I know. I have shared what I should not share. And now the burden passes to you. What you do with this knowledge is your choice. But remember, the mountain is watching, the guardian is patient, and the collection always has room for one more. Stay away from the peaks. Respect the wild. Let some places remain forever unknown. Or join the others in their eternal silence. Another bone in the collection, another warning that will not be heeded. The choice, as always, is yours. If this story has impacted you, if it has made you think differently about humanity's relationship with the wild places of our world, please subscribe and share. The message must spread. The warning must be heard. And perhaps, just perhaps, we can save a few more lives from being added to the mountain's terrible collection. Thank you for listening. Thank you for understanding. And thank you for respecting what should remain forever mysterious.